Welcome to All My Children Wear Fur Coats with Peggy Hoyt. Our goal is to keep loved pets in loving homes by educating pet parents about the importance of ensuring every pet has a forever home. For more information about creating a legacy for your pet or to listen to archive shows, visit animalcaretrustusa.org or legacyforyourpet.com. Join your host, author, estate planning attorney, and animal advocate, Peggy Hoyt.
Hello, pet lovers. Welcome to All My Children Wear Fur Coats. I'm your host, Peggy Hoyt. This show is brought to you by the law offices of Hoyt and Bryan, where we create estate plans for pets and their people. Also brought to you by Animal Care Trust USA, a national nonprofit dedicated to keeping loved pets in loving homes. We do this by educating pet parents about the importance of getting a pet trust for their loved pet. We can also provide trustee services, and for more information, visit our website at actforpets.org. Today, it is my pleasure to introduce to you our guest, Jeremy Cohen. He is a return guest, and Jeremy is an attorney and the founder of Boston Dog Lawyers. Here's a little bit about Jeremy after he gets a chance to say hello. Hi, Jeremy.
Hi, Peggy. Thanks for having me back. I do love being on this show.
Well, you have some exciting information to share with us, and I can't wait to get to that. But I also want to tell folks a little bit about your background because it's a little unusual. Jeremy is the founder of Boston Dog Lawyers. In 2016, his became the first law office in Massachusetts dedicated to working solely on pet-related matters. He and his staff have now spoken with nearly 5,000 pet owners and pet businesses from around the world. He is in court on pet cases 2 to 3 days per week throughout the Commonwealth, and Boston Dog Lawyers now has an affiliate in San Diego and is the subject of a potential reality show. The lawyers at BDL make arguments in court that challenge the way pets are viewed in the legal system. They are regularly challenged by judges when seeking to align the modern view that society has for pets to the controlling case law from as far back as the 19th century. Sometimes they win and sometimes they hit roadblocks. Last week, they hit the pet lottery. The appeals court in Massachusetts determined that two people who were formerly in a relationship and had a dog together can be ordered to engage in shared possession enforceable by a court if they had ever shown an intention to share. And that's what we're going to talk about mostly in a few moments. Attorney Cohen has also become active in various areas of the pet world. He works in collaboration with the Ollie's Law Coalition to pass legislation that will start to protect pets and their owners at doggy daycare facilities. And he was invited to speak at the International Boarding and Pet Services Association and has been a guest lecturer at Tufts School of Veterinary Medicine. He was named the 2023 APDT Member of the Year for his service as the chair of the Ethics Committee for the Association of Professional Dog Trainers. The mission of the office is to encourage decision makers to get the right decision the right way. The belief is that in order to have these non-traditional legal issues taken seriously, it is vital that the lawyers be reasonable and credible. They are not animal rights activists at Boston Dog Lawyers. They are advocates for pet owners' rights. It took Jeremy 20 years to find his place in the legal world, and his hope is that resources like his are made available to a larger market so all pet owners and pet businesses have a reliable resource to turn to. And we thank you so much for that, Jeremy.
Wow. Thank you. That was a great intro.
Wow, you are an amazing individual.
Based on what you said, it seems that, but I need to convince myself of that sometimes. Thank you for having us on. I say yes because my golden retriever is in the office as well, Maisie. I see yours. So it's a big day for pet owners, I think, with this 20-page decision that just came down in Massachusetts from the appeals court. And I'm happy to start talking about that case and walk you through it a little bit.
Yeah, give us some background and
Sure.
Tell us what happened and why it's so exciting.
The case, as it's public knowledge now, is Lyman v. Lancer. And we represent Brett Lyman, and Brett is a 30-something that got together with Lancer, his ex-girlfriend now, and they were dating, and then they decided to live together. And while they were living together, they decided to get a dog together. This is pretty common. The whole scenario is pretty common with what we deal with pet custody cases. And so they purchased this dog, Teddy Bear, a black Pomeranian. Teddy Bear is now about 6 years old. Brett hadn't seen Teddy Bear for about a year and a half until yesterday. I got a great picture of him reunited with Teddy Bear. But along the way, he and his ex-girlfriend, when they broke up, they were sharing Teddy Bear. And Teddy Bear would go back and forth between their residence. And then his ex decided that she didn't really like doing that anymore. Oftentimes, a new partner comes in and doesn't want the ex sharing a dog or a cat or meeting with the former partner either. And so she just kept the dog. And Brett is a patient guy, but suddenly he realized it was months and he hadn't seen Teddy Bear. There were a lot of excuses. So he came to us and we filed a lawsuit. And when you file a lawsuit in a case like this, we're not seeking money. The money is one of the big things that you would try to get from a court. Here, we wanted time. We wanted to get Brett time with his pet. And so you can sue for both things. It's important, the distinction, because as we point out to the court, there's no adequate remedy at law, meaning money is not going to replace the bond and the relationship that Brett had with Teddy Bear. And it's one thing we've emphasized all along is that just because the relationship with each other ends doesn't mean the relationship with the pet ends. And here we know both of them have ownership rights and possessory rights. And initially we won. And the judge gave us a very modern outlook that, yes, these two people should be sharing their pet. The judge ordered shared custody, 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, and a preliminary order. That way we didn't have to wait 2 years for the whole case to get to trial. It was an initial order, and then we proceed with the rest of the case. But then the defendant appealed it to the appeals court. And a single justice of the appeals court in Massachusetts ruled against us and said, all they're doing is trying to say that the dog is like a child, when in reality, the dog is nothing more than a lamp, or a pencil, or a piece of paper. And so that was really offensive to us, because we never once ever argued that the dog is like a child. This is not a child custody case. And we're working to show how many different ways the dog is not like a child. But ultimately, we were successful. We filed an appeal before a 3-panel justice bench, where they would read our paperwork and hear oral argument. And we get 15 minutes back in November to give oral argument. This case just lined up perfectly. We have the right client, the right facts, and it's time. 7 years ago when I started, it wasn't time. 5 years ago, it might not have been time. Over each year, we try to find another section of the law where we try to modernize by arguing to judges, not through the legislature. And here, this was an accumulation of some of our prior orders that helped us, and we include all those orders in everything we do so judges can see how other judges have ruled. They need that permission, that precedent. And as soon as the case started, well, when the case started and they called it, I mean, the prep was probably 5 to 7 hours per minute. So I got 15 minutes and the prep was just insane. But when they called the case, I wasn't even ready. I was in the men's room and they called the case. They called it earlier than we expected. So if you watch the video on the YouTube, the justices are looking around like, where's this guy? And so I already showed up there like with a little bit to make up for. But the first thing I said was, we are not here to advocate for pets' rights, because we're not a pets' rights law firm. We're the pet owners' rights law firm. And that distinction is what's helped us through the last 7 years, because otherwise, hearing back from judges, we wouldn't be taken reasonably. They wouldn't take this stuff serious. And in the beginning, no judge took it serious. And they made it very clear they were unhappy we were there. But suddenly I had 3 justices and they took this very serious.
So they must have been dog lovers or animal lovers, as opposed to maybe the first justice you were in front of, who maybe wasn't so much of a pet lover.
Right. Definitely, you can read into that. Who you have as a judge matters so much. But also, for me, one of the things that I'm so lucky I found this area of law is it brings out a certain passion, a certain fire. And when this first was appealed before a single justice, they didn't take oral argument. And so they just did it on paper. And what I offer and what I want to talk about, it doesn't come through on paper so much to differentiate the way it does when I speak orally. I have a long way to go with my oral presentation skills, but the passion's there. And I just was loving the questions. You start talking, you have this 15 minutes that you think you're going to say, and all they do is start asking you questions, and they bring you off topic. And so suddenly, whatever you're prepared to say in order, it's off. You just go with where they bring you. And they were very challenging, so challenging that it was 50-50 that we were going to get this based off their questions.
Right. Well, and you mentioned that in the first level of appeal that the judge viewed it more like they thought you were arguing for like child custody rights, but instead the judge said that it was more about personal property. And then you made a comment to me earlier about they said that personal property couldn't be shared. But I mean, I can think of lots of ways I could share personal property, right?
Right. The problem is there's not a lot of case law on it. So for Massachusetts, we had to go back to ships that were mutually purchased by people. And the judges knew. The thing is, they know every case you're going to talk about. And and so that's the thing you got to squeeze into your head. And they said, show us one case where a court ordered sharing of personal property among people who were not living together, or not family. And there just isn't one.
Oh
We
my
could
gosh.
not find one. But now we can. Now everybody can.
Right.
And
You mean you never had a couple before that bought a Porsche together and then they broke up and they wanted to share the car?
that's all we talked about was a car. Of course, two people can share a car.
Right.
And but one justice really dug in and said, it's different. There's a title to a car. Well, there's title to a dog too, but he pointed out he was really digging in on the car analogy, and sometimes using the car analogy is favorable, but here the difference is a car, you could buy out the other person, and the other person could go buy the same car.
Identical car, right.
And that we're here because it's time that the courts recognize that pets are a special type of personal property for which money cannot replace that bond. And this court nailed it. They accepted that market value is not going to replace the value of a pet to its owner. And it's not going to make up for the time and that you've lost and the bond that you've had. They recognize so many things in this case that personal property, that while dogs are personal property, they're this special type with a special purpose, including they say the very object of which was to obtain an animal's companionship. When you purchase a dog, they're now saying companionship means something. It's not just having a lamp, it's having something where you want to spend time with it, and it needs to spend time with you. And so we're breaking free from that whole argument that pets are no different than a table or chairs. And here we made it clear to the justices, we'd never said the word child custody. It was the single justice who said child custody. And there's differences. And one of the differences, I know you just had a show about this, is a difference between a child and a pet. It's one major difference is a pet can be put down for behavior, for poor behavior. A pet can be euthanized, and other people can make that decision. The government can even make that decision for behavioral euthanasia. Well, that doesn't happen with children. So right there, there's always going to be that separation. And in other ways too, pets are not children, but in some people's eyes, especially people that don't have children and live together, which is happening a lot now among 20-somethings and 30-somethings, they consider the pet a member of their family. So we're not asking that that pets have standing in court where their name could be on the case, that this would be Teddy Bear Lyman versus Lancer. We're not asking for that. Where a child can get a guardian or eventually file suit in its own name, we're not asking for that. We're just saying pet owners need a new way of handling this, because this is the new type of sharing of property that happens. This is the new property dispute. And we've seen in other cases how often somebody will just like fraudulently, one ex will obtain the pet. Or sometimes I've seen them sneak into someone's yard at night and take the dog if it's out on a tie out, or actually punch them in the face and take it. We've had cases like that. So that those days need to end, and the courts need to provide a fair arena where people will be heard. And now I believe they will, with some limitations.
So does the old adage apply in this instance, where it's always best to have something like this in writing?
Absolutely. This court said you just have to show an intention, a mutual intention and agreement, that it doesn't have to be in writing. But if you could do this before you get the dog or when you get the dog, it's not important whose name's on everything and who paid for everything. It's about, did these people co-own and agree to co-share even when their relationship ended? So there's still the indicia of ownership. You still need to show the things I talked about. But the most important piece now, if you're not going for the entire possession of the dog, which a lot of these cases you can't because you've both engaged in the care, have something in writing. And a writing is a text message, but where it shows mutuality and mutual agreement. Yes, if something happens to us, we both get to keep our relationship with the pet. Details to follow. And the court makes a point in this decision to say it's okay that there weren't details. Just the fact that they were willing to share is fine. And now it's up to us, the parties or their lawyers, to figure out how that will actually look. But now we have the opportunity to do that. And just it's been 10 days of celebrating here. The acknowledgement has been amazing. And then, like I said, my client got Teddy Bear yesterday, and he'll have Teddy Bear for 2 more weeks. Every 2 weeks.
Okay, so they're going to do the 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off sharing arrangement.
Right.
Okay. And is the case over now? Do you still have to go to trial?
So the defendant fired her attorney and got a new attorney. He that was fired, but I believe she found a new attorney who wants to at least pursue the rest of the case in light of the decision, to now try to prove that there was no sharing agreement. But he's doing this in a different court. In the original court, I'm not sure how, because even the appeals court recognized that there was no doubt that these parties had an agreement to share. And they make that a very important limitation, because they said if two parties, if these folks never did share the dog and never spoke about the dog sharing after the relationship, they wouldn't have agreed with us. So that's the limitation. They don't want every property dispute over the sharing of a dog to come to court. But if this is what you want to do, then sure, you can come and we'll enforce an agreement. So they're kind of saying it is a special type of property. We're going to enforce the agreement because we know that just giving you the money value of the dog is not, it's not going to be helpful.
Right. Well, and clearly they did evidence an intent to share where they were actually sharing the dog.
Exactly. And it's just unfair. One person doesn't get to unilaterally say, that's it, I'm out. I always argue this was an adult decision they made to get the pet together, to live together. And you can't just delete adult decisions. You have to maintain that. And these folks have an obligation to the dog and still to each other based on the decisions they previously made, and their responsibilities and their right to enjoy their pet too. You just can't take that away from someone.
Yeah, I think this is fabulous. So every success builds upon another and creates a different environment for pet parents and their animals and the results that we get.
It does. I have found with changing the case law, you have to build in small blocks until you get the whole pyramid. And we're still on the first couple of levels, but there's so much improvement for how the law looks at our pets. And even this court in Massachusetts cited to the criminal law, and first to how harassment prevention orders now have a spot where you can put down if you are also in fear that the animal might suffer abuse. And so they're recognizing you don't have to list all your TVs and your lamps and your refrigerator, but if you're concerned that your pet might get abused, you can put that in. And the criminal law is so favorable to the protection of pets, and it's not specific to, they don't have a specific one to lamps and paper and pens. It's specific to, in our state, to dogs and pets. So these small improvements, as you bring them together and you stick them together, here the court found that, okay, we're not acting ridiculous when we say this is the next step, that this has to be recognized in the courts. And they're not recognizing that that pets have rights. They're recognizing that the court is the right place to deal with this particular issue. And building off of all the arguments we've made before, they combined it all. And ultimately, we went to them with case law from the 1800s. Here's the property law. Here's the contract law, Your Honors. You're not creating anything new, because judges don't want to do that. They have to base their decisions on something that came before them. Sometimes it can be stuff that's out of state, but it's more authoritative when it's in state. And while we had these old property and contract law cases, we just didn't have any for pets.
None that were related to pets, right? Well, and explain a little bit more for the listeners, if you will, Jeremy, about how in the domestic arena or domestic abuse, where restraining orders can now be issued because of a fear that not only harm to yourself, but harm to the family pets.
And also a claim that you need this animal for emotional support. This is in every case now. Somebody is coming forward and saying, oh, you can't take that dog from me. It's my emotional support animal. That was even a defense in this case. But as we pointed out to the judges, and they cited in their decision, the defendant claimed the dog was her emotional support animal after the relationship ended. So it wasn't credible enough to relate back. But here in Massachusetts and in many other states now, I heard a stat that it's in 39 of 50 states. If you're being if you feel threatened or harmed, and in Massachusetts it has to be on 3 different occasions, it's different in every state, you can go to the court if it's somebody that you're living with or a family member, and to get basically a temporary restraining order. And you can get one that will issue for 10 days. And then in 10 days in this state, all the parties come and is sort of like a mini trial. But at first, just the victim shows. And so victims are now showing up with in Massachusetts, it's a 209A form, it's referred to as, and they can put down, there's a spot, are you concerned for an animal? Is there an animal involved that you want to go with you? And now you put the name of the animal, you check it off, and the court will make an order, at least temporarily, that the dog or the cat or whatever type of pet will go with you. And that's been a problem in our cases, because it's really difficult to undo an order like that because of the scare factor. Because the scare factor meaning you don't want to, a judge is hesitant to restore the status quo where they were sharing, because you don't want suddenly the one pet owner can't be within 100 feet of the other, so it's just not practical that they could ever share the pet. And so it becomes a real problem for attorneys to undo that. It can be done. It takes a little longer, because now you're asking another judge to undo what a prior judge did, and it gets tangled. But the thing is, sometimes it's just not credible, and the person claims it's an emotional support animal when it isn't, or they just went online and got a 1999 certificate. That stuff we're trying to educate judges is just not the true symbol of having an emotional support animal.
Okay, so wow, stay tuned for more to come, right?
Yeah, it's always Every day is a new argument.
Well, that's good. It keeps you interested, right? Keeps your firm growing. And tell us how things continue to change in other areas of the law as well, not just pet custody, but in the dangerous dog world, or veterinary malpractice, or other areas.
Sure. So in the dangerous dog world, they are developing these experts. There's so many more now than there were when I first started. These behavioral consultants or behaviorists who get are educated, get trained, and suddenly they're appearing more and more in court. And at least we now have people that are smarter than anybody else in the courtroom to say what should happen to a dog and why a dog may have acted the way it did. And that's working. I mean, some dogs certainly, I believe, need to be euthanized because of their behavior, but there's a series of remedies and safeguards and training, so many things that can be tried before you just say, you know what, this dog is just not, it's too likely to do it again. Between muzzles, fences, stronger leashes, harnesses, walking just one dog at a time. Sometimes people walk two giant dogs at the same time and lose control of one. There's so many more practical ways to resolve this than just saying the dog bit, so we'll kill it. So I find myself taking on somewhat more controversial cases where people really think this dog is a murderer. They actually attribute those types of traits to a dog, that somehow it went for the kill and it laid in wait until somebody came by because it wanted to really tear them apart. And it's really hard to accept that, because especially when it's coming out of the mouths of victims or neighbors and not out of behaviors. And so we just try now, again, to be practical and reasonable. It's the same mission for any type of case we have. We just want the authorities to get to the right decision the right way, instead of giving into emotion and hyperbole about what a dog may or may not have done, and the embellishment. Just let the facts lead them there. And if the facts say, look, this dog cannot be a safe member of society, then, or this owner cannot have this dog, doesn't know how to manage the dog, then there needs to be changes. And that's one thing I'm really clear with my clients. Like, if now I just won't take the case. You get a pretty good sense early if they're an engaged owner, or actually willing to say, yes, this is my fault. I need to be a better manager tomorrow than I am today.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In the veterinary world, for 7 years, we've handled these cases trying to figure out a new way besides going to court. And at Boston Dog Lawyers, when we get calls about the vet harmed or killed my dog or cat, we get at least one of our 3 calls per day is that call. So it's simple. It's so easy to blame your vet. And so we put together a panel around the country of veterinarians who will review the vet records. And so that really, and will give the pet owner the understanding is that, you know what, here's what happened. And it wasn't the vet's fault. Here's how they maintain the minimum standard of care. So when we actually sue on cases and go to court, my belief was the insurance companies and the lawyers for these insurance companies, because there's only a few insurance companies and it's the same lawyers, would give us the benefit of the doubt. Like, okay, if it came from Boston Dog Lawyers, then this thing has something and we need to address it and we need to be fair and we can't just blanketly deny things. But it occurred to me that has got us nowhere. I have cases that are 5 years old because the insurance company won't settle. And we've never had a case go to trial, but these insurance companies, and there's just a few, are spending 50, 60, 70,000 to defend a $10,000 case. It just doesn't make financial sense that they would do this. And I don't think the veterinarians are very aware of how these insurance companies really penalize the dog owners, the cat owners, whatever pet it is. These insurance companies are not good for their business, because once the insurance company gets involved, that's it. The person's never going to come back to your facility, because the insurance company treats pet owners so poorly, without any compassion, any empathy, and it's nickel and diming so much that I finally said, you know what? And I was getting somewhat decent settlements for clients, but they felt that's fine, but I had to sign a non-disclosure agreement, a confidentiality agreement. but I'm afraid this is going to happen to another dog. I want to be heard. So now we have a new approach. As long as what we get has some validity to it, where it's just as likely that something happened due to the vet, we're not going to put it through this sifter and make sure we only file suit on things that are green lighted. We need to know what happened. The vet turns its back on the pet owner because that's what the insurer and lawyers say to do. So now the pet owner has no idea what happened. They fill it in with these gaps with the worst of the worst. Suddenly this person that they trust to love for their pet won't even call them back. Not the veterinarian's fault. They're told that they have to do that. Launch everything. So we're going after everything, and now we're going to the board. If the insurance companies are so protective of of their own money, which is all this is, well, now they're going to have to start defending the veterinarians about their own licenses. And if it's legitimate, we're going to go to the board now. In 7 years, I've never filed a board complaint to a veterinary board. And it's time, because no one is taking these errors and no one's taking these pet owners serious enough. At least the board will conduct an investigation. Since the insurance companies are taking years and we get nowhere, then it's time to do it a different way, because we have to change behavior and we have to spotlight things that are bad. But now, unfortunately, veterinarians, because of the way your insurance companies and lawyers have handled these cases, court's not going to get us anywhere, but the board should. Now, we have a very weak board in Massachusetts, I think, where they protect themselves, but in California, they don't. So it's different in every state. And having no experience, now we're going to have experience and people can hire us, and we do it. We'll go to the board.
Okay,
So
very
I didn't want to
interesting.
have to do that, but it's just a product of this dynamic of going to court's not working for pet owners, and it's not
Well,
working for me.
Yeah, do you ever find or feel like the insurance companies are just trying to, I mean, this is not the right term, but bankrupt the pet owner, like cause them to have to spend so much money on legal fees that they just give up?
Absolutely. Which is why when I first started taking these cases, lawyers said, you're never going to make any money. No one takes these cases. And I had to put together a different type of model because it is a lot of work. It's the reason I first went out and got a wartime paralegal, I called it, because the vet cases, not like other cases, were just burying you in paper, deposing the pet owners, dragging this out, making them have to talk about it, answer questions so much about it that they'd have to relive it. And they just said, well, we'll paper them to death. But I want it to be economical for our clients, but we have to get paid too for our time.
Right.
But what I tell them is, you're hiring us first and foremost for accountability. Second is to try to get you some money back for what you paid or what you lost. So if you can deal with the fact that it's accountability first and money second, then we're your firm. And people are accepting of that, because this is another area of law that we'll build on it. We build on each success, we'll build on it, on the prior success. And as you see, the courts are saying money is not an adequate replacement for dogs when it comes to companionship in a custody case. So it probably is going to be the same thing when a vet kills your dog, or a boarding facility, or a trainer, or a groomer. You can't just give the person money. It's not an adequate remedy. So really, we have that decision already. We just have to argue it. But we're not ready for that yet. The courts are not ready for that yet, and the veterinarian lobby is not ready for that yet. So we'll do it on the right case at the right time, like we waited here for Mr. Lyman.
All right. Well, the good news for pet owners is that things are changing slowly but surely.
And with you, exactly, with you making sure pets are cared for after the owners pass away, people should also be reaching out to make sure the pet is cared for after their relationship ends, that they can preserve those rights. Because if you have something in writing, it will really prevent, I think, cases from going to court.
Absolutely, yeah. So what's the fun term for that? A pet nuptial, right?
Yeah, we're working on another, a pet nuptial. We have it going a perpetual, a petpetual, I think, where but we haven't found a good word yet. But yeah, we're more looking for a new word for custody, because even the court said using that word just conjures up children. So we're working on it. I have a list
Although
of
in
10
our
words.
state now, we don't use the word custody anymore, and I hate the word that we use, but we use time sharing
Really?
for children. And
For
to me,
children?
that's just such a, it sounds colder to
Yeah,
me than,
that really does.
yeah.
Well,
time
if they're not going to use custody, then maybe we can start using it again.
Yeah, maybe you can. Maybe it's moving out of the family law realm. But time sharing sounds like kids are real estate, right?
Yeah, yeah, that really does. I hadn't
Yeah.
heard that.
I don't care for that term. But thank you for mentioning about the pet trust, because yes, the more that we get people to do trust for the benefit of their pets, it's also an acknowledgement of the role that the pets play in our lives and the fact that we want them to be cared for if we're unable to provide that care.
Such a great service that you
So
provide.
I'm having fun. Every day I get to talk to somebody who loves their pets enough to create a pet trust for them. So it makes my practice interesting as well.
I need to send more people to you because
Thank you. Well,
it's just a natural next step.
okay. So when do you change the name of your firm from Boston Dog Lawyers to just Boston Pet Lawyers?
It's on my list of things to do. Definitely on my list. And the thing is, I track it about 17 different types of pets that people have called about. Rabbits, people claiming they have pet turkeys, pet turtles, fish. Someone called about a hermit crab.
Oh,
I wouldn't take that case on right now, but pet chickens, those bearded dragons, snakes.
yeah.
We had a great pet.
Tortoises?
Horses, of course.
No, yeah, but tortoises.
Oh, tortoises, yeah.
Yeah, because they live
Tortoises.
a long time, and you know, if you and I are together and we have a tortoise together and we break up, that's a long-term commitment.
Right. It will outlive us too, for
Yes.
the most
So
part.
you have to have a plan. So, Jeremy, I can't thank you enough for joining me today and coming back and keeping us updated on some of the changes in the law, and this one, which is really exciting for pet owners. So I appreciate you doing that. And I hope we can have you back every year with something just as exciting to talk about.
Absolutely. This is a great forum for me because you draw out the best in me and you let me explain things. I probably go on too long, but this is a way to spread the word that there are advances in pet law and people should know about it.
Absolutely. And if our listeners would like more information about Jeremy or Boston Dog Lawyers, you can find them at bostondoglawyers.com. And thank you to our listeners for joining us here today. You know my motto, until there are none, please adopt one and protect your pet with a pet trust. Thank you, Jeremy. And until next time, happy tails.
Thank you for joining us on All My Children Wear Fur Coats with your host, Peggy Hoyt. We hope you learned something valuable for the benefit of your pet. We want to keep loved pets in loving homes by educating pet parents about the importance of ensuring every pet has a forever home. Get more information about creating a legacy for your pet at animalcaretrustusa.org or legacyforyourpet.com. Buy a copy of All My Children Wear Fur Coats, How to Leave a Legacy for Your Pet on Amazon. Join our email list or make a donation.